Welcome to the True Republic, the show where we question power through the lens of conscience. I'm your host, Sage Clokey, and in each episode, I sit down with people from all walks of life, philosophers, pastors, activists, artists, to ask one timely question: what makes something moral? Together, we explore where morality meets legality and what happens when personal conscience collides with centralized systems of authority. This isn't about politics, it's about principles. It's about rediscovering the foundations of a truly free society, one built not on coercion, but on conscience. So join me as we search for truth, one conversation at a time, here on the True Republic.
Woohoo! Right on.
So, what is your name?
My name is Brandon Johnson. I'm a pastor in Santa Cruz County, and yeah, I'm an advocate for truth and justice in the American way.
Awesome. Okay, so the first question that I have for you is, if a law conflicts with your own moral conscience, do you have an obligation to follow it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you think of people like Martin Luther King Jr., Henry David Thoreau, Gandhi, those who have resisted in the past the um, the civic law magistrates, the civic authorities, when it violated their conscience, right? So yeah, I would say absolutely we do. In fact, our conscience is, we can't violate our conscience when we live our lives. We have to be able to resist things that are inconsistent with God's law, inconsistent with how we perceive God's law to order the universe. So, yeah, I would say yes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Do you?
Um, I think that law is not something that people can create. It's something that is discovered, and it's something that is intrinsic to nature.
Yeah, it's transcendent.
Yeah,
Yeah, the laws come from outside of us. They transcend our individual personal um, morality.
exactly. So, can you name anything that you want the? Wait, never mind. Um, when there's a conflict between the individual's conscience and the commands of political authority, is the individual obligated to act against their beliefs to obey the law?
Well, each individual is a free moral agent, and each individual has to make that decision themselves. When we act inconsistent with when we act consistently with our conscience, it's good for us. One of the things that Martin Luther, the monk, said is that unless I can be argued by scripture or by reason, I cannot obey the Pope and the Catholic Church, violating my conscience. And he actually cites his conscience. So we can't violate our conscience. It brings um, damage and harm to us, to our souls, and to our character, our personality, if we violate our conscience. So no, I do believe we're supposed to resist it. The challenge that we face is that there's circumstances to resisting authority. There's consequences to resisting authority.
Right. There's certain times when you it's more of like, when do you choose to resist authority because there is a consequence behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're always it is always right to do what is right and wrong to do what is wrong.
I agree with that, absolutely.
And when people who say they're in authority in government write down laws that go against what is actually moral, it doesn't change what is moral, you'd say.
Right, because morality and truth is transcendent. So even though they make laws that violate that, so I would think my mind goes to Martin Luther King Jr. in the Birmingham jail. His letters from the Birmingham jail. He talks specifically about that and says, an unjust law, or a just law, I am obligated by God to obey just laws. But when there's unjust laws, I am equally have a duty to disobey an unjust law.
Right. You have an obligation to do what is moral, no matter if it is written down as government law or not.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Um, it's it's not that it's a law written down that is just that makes it where you have to follow it. It's that it is just that you have to follow it.
I'd agree. Yeah, the law, the fact that it's written down doesn't make it just.
Right.
Yeah.
The writing isn't some magical thing that changes what is actually right.
And I do think of, being a pastor, I do think of there were times where Jesus would say, "It is written," and the Pharisees would come to him, the political leaders, and they would say, "Hey, we were told that is it's okay. Moses was able to have let people divorce their wives. What do you say?" And Jesus would answer them with a question, often say, or he would say, "It is written." In other words, what does the law say? What does the transcendent law of Moses say? That was given to us on Mount Sinai. So, and so there are times where you can say that phrase, "It is written," which Jesus did, but it's referring to a transcendent law that has been written. And the new laws that are being written in our time and era, if they violate the ancient laws or they violate the transcendent law, they violate God's law.
Right. It's like saying it's written down in a science book that gravity is a thing, that
Right.
sort of thing.
Right.
Like writing down in a book saying like, "Oh, gravity isn't real anymore," doesn't mean you can float away.
Right.
You know.
Those are transcendent laws for sure. Yeah.
Um,
And then, and I think we're in a challenging time in human history because there are so many political philosophies, religious philosophies, scientific philosophies that are saying things like there is no transcendent moral law. There is no absolute truth. Everything's subjective. And granted, there are some things that are subjective, but the actual law law itself transcends subjective moments.
right.
Context.
It's the difference between the true republic and the corrupted republics. Is the corrupted republics believe that people's opinions can change what is moral,
Yes.
and that's the thing that corrupts a republic is when people believe that what they believe to be true changes what is true.
Mhm.
um, what is true isn't up to what people believe. What people believe is up to what is true.
Yeah. Well, and I would say it's very important that what you're saying is very important because it's the difference between a transcendent law and lawgiver or governments of men. So when we say that the governments of men decide the laws, that's what we call statism. You're just basically
Right.
the state is law, the state is God,
Right.
and
The state ha- statism is when the state has the monopoly on the legitimate use of force.
yes,
That's the sort of like the definition of what a state is. And um, if if you reject that and say that the legitimate use of force can be done by anyone as long as it is legitimate force that is not coercion but defense of others or property.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, the legitimate use of force. I mean, there are transcendent laws that you have the right, like a mother has a right to defend her children
Right.
against an aggressor. A father has a right to defend his family. This is where we get the English common law of every man's house is his castle. Like if you break into someone's home in the middle of the night with a weapon or a threatening weapon or of intent to harm, and you end up dying because you did that, the castle doctrine says, well, you broke in and you were a legitimate threat to this family at night, and therefore you got what you deserve.
Right. Um, that's sort of a decentralized view of the use of force that rejects the concept of the monopoly on the use of force by the state.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, you have a right to defend yourself in your home.
yeah.
And now, one of the things we're facing lately is that in California there has been a series of laws been enacted on the castle doctrine to the point now where you essentially don't have a castle doctrine in California, because they say you have to be able to demonstrate that you have a belief about that you will have extreme bodily harm or death. That the person is threatening you with extreme bodily harm or death. So if someone breaks into your home at night and you don't see that they have a knife, or you don't see that they have a gun, and you shoot them, not having a clear concern for your life, then if that person's life is taken, then the castle doctrine doesn't take an effect. That is also true in ancient, um, like ancient English law. If someone breaks into your home at night, you're automatically safe from prosecution. If someone breaks into your home during the day, or comes into your home during the day, where you can see them and they're not a threat, and you kill them, then that's a different set of laws. So
Right. Like if like someone like walks into your house on accident, that sort of thing,
mhm.
um,
They knock on the
then
door because they're trying to ask if they can have a cup of sugar, and they think you're in the back part of the house, and you're, hey, can you still get a cup of sugar? And like, you
like
shoot them.
that's not as
Yeah,
like justified. Um,
yeah, because they entered your home without either announcing themselves. You weren't aware of their intent. Well, their intent is probably defined by the fact that they're carrying a cup of empty sugar, asking if they can have a cup of sugar. So, yeah, so
right. Okay.
these are good
So
questions. I like these.
the next question I have is is there anything that the government has the right to do that normal people don't have the right to do?
Well, executing judgment on behalf of the state or behalf of the community, yes, the government has the right to. I hate to say this, but the government has the right to enact taxes, which used to be that there were tariffs that were enacted upon other governments, and our country would make money on tariffs, or just sales tax between sales. But then they instituted the income tax. So the question is, does the government have the right to institute income tax? Well, they have the right to do so, even though they shouldn't, because they should find other ways to get money rather than taxing the income of the individuals. And up until the Civil War, there was no income tax, and then it was ratified in the what is it, Bill of Rights, in number Amendment 16, I think it was. We think we were
Yeah, it
talking
was
about
in
the
1913.
yeah, that they enacted the civil rights. They enacted the income tax, which was supposed to be a very, very small tax. I think it was like 1 to 3%, and now the income tax is up like to 20, 25, thirty
Right.
percent.
Nothing's more temporary than nothing is more permanent than a temporary government solution.
Yes, which could lead us to the Prop 50 that's going on right now.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you're familiar with Prop 50.
That's the redistricting.
Yeah. So what happened was, in 2008, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's a moderate Republican, he wanted to make it so that the politicians wouldn't keep redistricting California and um, pushing the other side out, and giving themselves more power, more of the incumbents. They wouldn't gerrymander, which, is in a crazy word in itself, but creating these districts that actually benefit one side versus the other. So he created a citizens independent commission on that. So it'd be 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans. They would write the district lines,
Right.
and it would never be partisan again. Now, granted, within those lines, you still got to win elections, and the majority of people in California tend to be liberal. But the reality is you wouldn't have the gerrymandering of the districts, by people who are trying to protect themselves, their power, and their control.
Like if you are to have representatives, you would want the proportion of representatives to reflect the people that live there.
Right. And right now, I think the proportion of people that are Republican is like 40%, and the rest is 60% Democrats. But the representation right now, I think there's 120 seats, and the Democrats control 100 of those seats. So it's so lopsided already. Like,
Right.
we've already been gerrymandered to the benefit of the Democrats, and so that what happened was, and then I'll make this short. But in Texas, there was a legal battle that took place that pointed out that there were 3 million illegals that were counted within the census. So when they created their districts, they used it based on illegal people, not citizens. So what happens is the judge. It took a few years for that to be proven. Well, then the judge said, then you need to redistrict because you guys have created the districts based on illegal aliens, not on citizens. So in the middle of the 10-year cycle, Texas is redistricting. Well, what's going to happen because of that? Because 3 million of those people were uh, illegals, you know, that kind of exposes that there is a plan from the Democrats to actually do that, to bring in illegals so that they can count them, so that they can redistrict the way they want to. So it was exposed. It was proven that it shouldn't have been done that way. The courts demanded that they change it. Well, then Gavin Newsom in California said, well, if you're going to do that, Texas, then we're going to suspend our independent commission, which is balanced, so that we can eliminate 5 seats, 5 more seats out of California to match the 5 seats that we're probably going to get lost in Texas. So he's, instead of keeping his nose in his own state, he's basically fighting the battle for Texas in our state.
Damn. So back to the question that I said, and
Yeah, go for it.
you mentioned taxes, um, and you said that this only the state has the right to uh, tax people.
Well, I don't have the right to tax people, but so what we have in our government is the government by the consent of the people. So the people have to agree to the tax.
What do you mean by agree, though?
So like so when in 1913 when the tax income tax was created, the representatives in the federal government who we voted in that amendment, and that I think you have to have a 2/3 percentage to vote in a new amendment. So they did that, believing they had our consent, but and some people would say they didn't. Some people say they do because they were voted in as representatives of us.
Well, so can a majority give consent to an entire population?
Great question. I mean, in a republic, a representational republic, where we vote in representatives, the majority can do that.
It,
That the whole,
the question is not about how it works in the republic we have now, but how it should be,
okay.
right?
Yeah, I would. That's a tough one. I'm not even sure I have an answer for that because I personally think income tax is theft. I mean, the government who has the
Right,
monopoly on
exactly.
violence has the right to demand you be taxed. And if you're a lower income person and you're taxed, and there's a higher income person and they're also taxed, but it doesn't affect them as much because they make so much more money, then it disproportionately affects you than it affects me. So really, the people in power who are more wealthy, if they're the ones making the decision, then they're taking away the rights of the common man to not have tax.
Exactly. So I'd say that all forms of taxation are theft because they're saying you have to pay this without asking your individual consent.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say that all consent is individual; it's not collective. You know, like if you're in a group and majority of people agree to something, it doesn't mean that the minority also agreed to that thing
Mm-hmm.
when they already said no, right? Um,
Yeah, I mean, we could compare that to like a income tax versus like a sales tax. So if you are in business and you have a business license with the government, they have the right to excise a tax on purchases. Okay, so
excise is another word for steal.
yes, yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think it's a bad situation. Some people would say, well, then how are we to raise a military? How are we to build roads? How are we to do any of the things that our government is supposed to be protecting us for? Protecting us to.
Well, so if um, like any sort of business, you get money from individuals voluntarily.
Hmm.
Um, like when you go to the store, you buy something, you pay them money, you get the thing.
Hmm.
That's sort of how every single interaction should work. It should be like trade between individuals and not like one group deciding you have to do it this way, you know?
I like that. Yeah. So each transaction is an individually conscience. There's a word for it. I can't think of what it is right now, but it's basically you're saying that all transactions need to be voluntary. They
Right.
they need to be between two individuals, consensual,
Yeah.
voluntary, consensual
Basically means the
tr-
same thing.
transactions.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the philosophy of True Republic? Is that's
Exactly.
how
Yeah. The
exchanges should
the
take
True
place?
Republic is um taking the idea of a republic and applying it down to the individual.
Mm.
And sort of it's rejecting the idea that a majority can consent for a minority. And so consent is only at the individual level. And so if you take that idea um, and apply that, you have the true republic.
Uh, that's pretty kick ass, if you ask me. I like that. So then let's take something like violence. All right, so the ability to raise up an army and defend your family against a foreign invader, or having a standing army or a militia. How would how would a government do that? Also, how would they enforce justice? Like, for instance, Romans 13 says that, do you not know that all authorities have been established by God? Those are ministers of justice, so that if you do evil, you should have terror, fear. If you do good, you should not be fearful, because you're doing what's good. So that's like a biblical position on the use of force, that if the government's doing good things, then and they're enacting on good to enforce justice, they're using, they call it an agent who bears the sword, so bears corporal punishment. Does the government have the right to bear corporal punishment in a true republic?
um, any individual that is using force to defend themselves, others, or their property and other people's property is justified in using that force.
Makes sense.
It doesn't matter if they call themselves, it doesn't matter what they call themselves. They can just be a normal person. They could be someone holding a badge or that sort of thing. What matters is not whether they have a badge or if they say that they have authority. What matters is if w- their actions are legitimate or not.
If they have righteous actions, if
Exactly.
they're functioning in a way that they are defending righteous people, or they're functioning ethically, they're functioning morally to protect other people, then they have a right to do so.
Exactly. So you mentioned Romans 13, and what it really specifically says is there is no authority except that which God has established,
Right.
meaning that no one has authority except for God and people acting as an agent for God.
Hmm. So if someone's not acting as an agent for God, then they automatically do not have authority.
Exactly.
So their authority comes with within the determined by the action they bring.
Exactly.
It's a very, very interesting interpretation of that passage, because most people would interpret it as that the authorities, plural, are the ones that have been granted authority by God. But you're saying that each individual transaction of authority is granted by God purely on the merits of its action.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I like that. It's a great
Yeah. It
interpretation.
it took me a while to think about Romans 13 in the proper way. Because like people would always use Romans 13 as a way to say the state is legitimate in what it does.
Right.
And like if you read most of the Bible, that is not what it says. Like because like in like Acts 5, it says we must follow God rather than men. So and those men are people who are in supposed authority. So that couldn't be what it means. So when I thought about it, the only conclusion that I sort of had was that one. So
On
yeah,
the merits of their actions, not on their recognizing authority. So
right,
so there's a part in society where we say, all right, these men have been skilled to to exercise authority well. They are physically able to. They are skillfully trained to exercise authority. So we will acknowledge them that they are exercising, that they have the right to do this job of protecting our culture and our
right,
society. So then we pick like voting in a sheriff, right, which is the highest law enforcement person in the land.
right. And the sheriff can only do what the people that ask that sheriff to be there are already have the right to do.
Right.
They just don't want to do it themselves.
Right. So yeah, and because you can't be, if you're gonna like have a farm and you have to spend half of your time having your weapons ready because someone is going to come steal your goods at any time moment. You actually can't actually build a farm because
Right.
at any moment you so you have your so
It's
you
more of a division of labor
yeah, it's a
problem and
division of
not
labor.
a this person has authority to do this and I don't. It's more of like I can do that, but I will
Delegate
delegate that
my
right to
authority,
someone
right?
else.
Delegate that right to someone else under my consent.
Right.
So then, yeah, so that I like that. So then we see that played out during the COVID era. There was uh, gross uses of tyrannical power by little tyrants who got drunk with power to demand that you cannot go outside, you can't go see your loved one as they're dying on their deathbed, you can't, and all of these people acted within what they said was established authority, but what they used was emergency rights. They said,
Right.
well, be based on these emergency rights, I have rights to do things that are unequivocally wrong, but we have the right to do them because we're doing them for good. So a
Right.
true republic would have
Evil
never done that.
exactly. Evil is never for good.
No.
Um an evil action, if an action itself is evil, it can't be done for good.
Yeah, the ends don't justify the means. That's
Exactly.
Machiavellian.
Yeah.
When I was in Florence last last month, this month actually, I saw a statue of Machiavelli. And I'm like, what is Machiavelli doing up there, right? And I looked up Machiavellian, and they're like, well, he came to this conclusion that if the the government has good intentions, they can use false flags or they can use trickery to get their intentions done. The ends justifying the means, which that's probably one of the biggest, the grossest atrocities that we see going on in our government today is dark money, black funds, CIA,
Oh yeah.
intelligence agencies operating without any oversight, and with unlimited amounts of resource to do
Right.
things that
Unlimited like lots of resources and lots of secrecy and they sort of they do whatever they want with no oversight of any sort and you don't even know what they're doing.
right,
So it sort of causes a bunch of people to come up with ideas of what they think they may be doing,
which may
and
be right or
which may be
wrong,
right or wrong because it's secrecy.
right? It's secrecy,
When something is in secret and you're trying to figure out what they're doing, you you're gonna make some wrong assumptions, and then when you do that, they call it like defamation or something like that. Um,
yeah.
and it and so like you like someone could have been right that that's how what happened for something and or you could be wrong but
But we'll never know
but
because
you'll never really
they have
know
a cloak of secrecy.
because exactly um and so I think it's important to do things out in the open instead of in secret.
Absolutely. And that's a big deal. Like the Bible talks about that. Like things that are done in secret are evil. Like the very act of doing something in secret re, re, you know protects the person's intentions from scrutiny. So, like for instance, in was it 1961, JFK did a he preached a message or taught he did a speech called "The President and the Press," in where he said that secrecy is an anathema to the American way of life. Like,
Right.
and because always there will be used to justify the secrecy will be used to justify actions, apart from government oversight, and then the government will cover it up when they make mistakes.
The very word secrecy is repugnant to a free and open society.
That's what he said.
Yeah,
I love it.
it's a great quote.
Right. And then he talks about like instead of armies by day, they're guerrillas by night. And then now you're getting into different levels of warfare that are so you're not having countries representing themselves. You got countries having proxy wars with other groups of people doing the work and but being paid for by the state or not, but there's no way to know.
Right. Like most of the wars in the world nowadays are United States proxy wars, where they use the soldiers of other countries to do their bidding to whatever means they want.
Right, and even right now with the present conflict that's going on in Israel, there is evidence, and I don't haven't fully investigated this evidence, but let's just say that there's accusations that Netanyahu's actually funded Hamas so that
Yeah.
they could keep a war going on with the Gazans between the Palestinian Liberation Authority.
So they have an excuse to um, like ethnically cleanse the area so that they could make it where it's a a solely Jewish state instead of um,
The Greater Israel Project is what Steve Bannon calls it.
right,
That Netanyahu is operating on the preconceived idea that he can do whatever he wants to create the Greater Israel Project, which was the fulfillment of the Israeli the promise of the land to Israel all the way up to the Nile, Tigris and the Euphrates, all the way down to the Nile. So that entire land would be controlled by ethnic Israel. Which the hard part is that the people in Israel today are not even ethnic Israel. Um, well, there's 12. There were 12 tribes, not one tribe. One tribe was called Judah and Benjamin. Those are two tribes, and those are the only ones that stayed faithful to the word of God during the exile in Babylon, and then they were brought back after 70 years. So when Paul uses the word Jew, he's referring to the only tribe that remained faithful or even remained consistent in their belief system that is even identifiable as Jewish or as Israeli.
right,
So the other 10 tribes have been dispersed by the Assyrians throughout all the world, and we're not even sure who they are.
right, and also like um, in um, like Jewish history in the Torah, I think, with like Abraham.
Uh-huh.
Um, there's sort of a history of him trying to make happen what he has promised before the time comes
Yes,
in a moral way,
with
right?
Hagar,
With with uh, um,
Sarah, his wife.
where like he would cheat on his wife with Hagar, or he would or like in Egypt when he said that his wife was
His
his
sister,
sister.
yeah, Sarah. He called Sarah
Um,
his sister.
that it's important to um, not do immoral things to bring about what you think you were promised before the time is right.
Yes. So you violate God's principles to bring about God's purposes. and in so doing, you violate God's law, and therefore you you forfeit that blessing.
Right.
And that's what some people would
Well, it
say.
doesn't exactly. It didn't forfeit the blessing. It just made it where the blessing came about in a different way. It redirected the
And
blessing.
it was convoluted, and
Yeah.
so therefore didn't come to it didn't come in a pure way.
Exactly.
Right. That's good. I like how you're saying that. I mean, he did that multiple times, but he took matters in his own hands rather than wait on God to show up.
Right.
All right, what else?
All
What
right.
questions we got here for the true republic?
Next question.
Yes.
If the majority of people think it is okay to steal from a minority, does that make it good?
No.
Good answer.
Federalist paper number 51, James Madison said that the pure democracy is just basically a survival, or the uh, the majority has the tyranny of the majority, where the 51% get to decide what's right for the 49%, which is basically two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner, right?
Right. So, like, because like when you have majority rule democracy, it's not really democracy because it's not the people ruling themselves. It's people ruling over other people, depending on who the majority is and who the minority is.
Mm-hmm. That in itself is an imbalance of power,
Exactly.
even if it's only a subtle imbalance, still an imbalance of power.
Right. Like each individual has domain over themselves and their property, and any encroachment over that domain um, is a violation of consent and is immoral.
That's good. I'm liking this true republic more and more each time you talk
Yeah.
about it.
Um,
The other thing that James Madison was talking about in I think it's Federalist Paper 51, that they studied the Greek states, the city states of Greece, and what happened was that two city states would just gang up on another city state and enforce their will upon them. So that's why pure democracy always devolves into destruction and tyranny.
yeah,
So that was what the
pure majority rule democracy
yes,
um, always goes toward tyranny because it doesn't recognize that each individual owns themselves and that what someone else wants to do with your property doesn't matter, right? You property rights mean nothing if you if other people can decide what to do with your property
yeah, whenever
because
they want,
because
right? Yeah,
all property means is the exclusive right to do with a thing.
yeah, with that means of production, or with that, yeah, mean that, yeah, with that item, or that piece of property.
Right.
Yeah, it's only your property if you have exclusive right to determine what to do with it
Exactly.
without coercion or control
Yeah.
against your consent. Which we go to, like, even things like property tax, especially for people over like 60. Like, why are people over 60 who worked their entire lives poured into our system being taxed on a piece of property that they've owned for 40 years? And basically, the property taxes could be so expensive that it could drain their savings, and so they have to until they're
Right.
completely poor with nothing. And so that is completely immoral.
Right. The property taxes force everyone to have to use the money system that the state creates.
Right. And that property tax, that money system, that property tax is always imbalanced in the favor of the state and not in the favor of the individual.
Right. And since the money system that we have now is based on debt, um, all of the resources move toward who the debt is owed to, which is the Federal Reserve.
Yeah. So the true republic would be against the Federal Reserve.
That's right.
Yes, good. Federal Reserve is a scam
Exactly.
foisted on the American people. What is it?
Anything that is based on debt and charging interest is a scam.
Well, and then what happened during Nixon? They got rid of gold. They demanded. Was it Nixon or was it before Nixon? They got off the silver standard. They got
So
off the
they
gold
got
standard.
completely off the gold standard with Nixon, and with FDR, they suspended the ability. They suspended exchanging for gold for a bit, and they also made holding gold illegal.
Illegal, yeah.
Yeah,
They made it. You have to give us your gold. Now,
yeah,
did they? The government would buy it from you at a certain amount, but you had to buy it. Like it's almost like a gun buyback or something.
yeah, exactly. Like,
You have to give us your gold. You're not allowed to even own any gold, and if you kept any gold, you go to jail.
right. It's not like just because there's an exchange of goods doesn't make it a trade,
No,
right?
because if it's demanded on the time frame of the government, then it can be not in your best interest to exchange it.
No matter what the exchange is, if the exchange is initiated by coercion, it is not a valid exchange.
And this is why there have been developed very, very elaborate theories about things like what happened in North Carolina with these amazing once in 100-year floods that destroyed all of these homes that happened to be within miles of rare earth mineral mines that are not even being used. So, and if our government has figured out how to channel and change the direction of floods and tornadoes, and that there could have been some manipulation there to destroy all the homes in a particular area so that they could then buy that land that they wanted back from those people at ridiculously low prices.
Right.
Now
Yeah,
that's a huge
that's a crazy one.
that's a crazy one, but
Like,
if you
I
have
wouldn't be surprised if that is true.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, those mountains are filled with rare earth minerals, so we shall see if time will tell if there's something nefarious that went on there that
Right.
was beyond just Mother Nature. All right. Well, and see, kind of going back to, oh yeah, I had a book that I was going to mention, but I'll mention it a little later because it's
Okay.
go for our next question.
All right. Um. So I guess, what number of people does it take to think an evil action is good for it to become good? Wait. For it
Zero,
to be,
zero.
yeah,
If it's so, something is either evil or it's good. It doesn't depend on whether people agree upon it or not.
exactly. Morality doesn't change based off of what people think. What people think changes based upon what people discover is moral.
Yes,
Um, Morality doesn't change, but people's perception of morality does.
that's a good one.
And it's sort of weird how many people like believe that morality is subject to what people think and what society thinks is moral or not. And like that's very weird.
I think there's direct correlation to the destruction of a society that starts to adopt um, and say things like morality is does change, or it's only true. Your truth is your truth, and my truth is my truth. No, there is a transcendent truth that we're
Right.
both trying to find.
There's like opinions like
Yeah,
I like strawberries.
right.
Like
That's your
that's
truth.
your truth,
Right,
and like someone else could not like strawberries.
right.
But that's that's an opinion, and not like there's a difference between like opinions and moral truths.
Right.
And moral truths don't change, opinions can change.
Well, and that's what we're dealing with when you have being taught in universities post you know we're postmodern. The postmodernism is to
Right.
say that there is no absolute truth. It's just based on whatever people come up with, and that type of law and that type of lie is the exact same laws and lies that were given by Nazi Germany during the Nuremberg trial, saying, well, if our culture determined that doing this to this group of Jews was okay, then our culture determined that it was okay, so it's okay. And that was obviously categorically rejected by the
Right.
Nuremberg trials, saying, no, there is a lawgiver, and you violated the lawgiver's ultimate transcendent law by doing what you did.
Right. Um, Law is not something people create.
No,
It's something that exists and is discovered.
people discovered it. That's
Um, I guess next question is, can people by voting give politicians the right to do things that none of the voters have the right to do themselves?
right. The answer is no. The problem is that they do.
Yeah, so they don't have the right to do things that normal people don't have the right to do, and the problem is that they do those things. That's sort of what makes what we have now a corrupted republic,
Right.
um, where it's not really a republic; it's more of a it's a kingdom with the look of a republic.
Some would call it an empire.
Exactly.
It's empire. I have friends, especially pastors, that use the term empire a lot, and they try to, and I think they misuse it at times. But in this case, I would say the republic has become an empire when it ceases to do good, and its sole goal is to self-sustain itself.
Right.
Right.
Empire is when you have two separate groups of people. You have those who rule and those who are the subjects of those who rule, and there's a centralization of like protection where you have like a central standing army instead of having everything be decentralized um, down to the individual and flowing from the individual.
It's good.
Okay. Next question. Is there any means by which individuals can delegate to someone else the moral right to do something they don't have the moral right to do themselves?
Very similar question to the last one, but
Right.
so I would say again, no.
Yeah.
Um, all rights that are being delegated must be rights that are also moral for the person, the other individual to enact.
Right.
So we get into like laws of criminal punishment, things like that, where we have handed the government the right to execute what we would call justice or penalty upon an individual. Now the question is does a person have the right to exercise that law upon that person individually also? Like, so for instance, say a father has a daughter who's raped, 12-year-old girl's raped. The In some cultures, especially in the Hebrew culture, the payment punishment for that would be the person's put to death or stoned.
Right.
So therefore, does the father have the right to have the state be the one doing the stoning, or the community be the one that does the stoning rather than himself do the stoning? And I would say that he does, but only if he has the right by God's law to do that.
Exactly.
And I actually think that if you look at the Hebraic law, the Torah, I'm not sure though that that's the payment that was given for rape. It might not have been that. It might have been something else. I don't know. That seems like should be the right.
Right.
It should be the right
That makes sense.
judgment. But I'm not even my Hebrew law recollection is not strong right now.
Um.
So that would be a question for the future.
Okay.
Future.
So, like, a follow-up question to that would be: if it's bad for you to do something like steal money, is it okay for you to get for you to get someone else to do it on your behalf.
No, which is basically what taxes are.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're having the government excise tax from my neighbor so that then I can use it to pay for my school. Where I,
Right.
you know,
Like you can ask your neighbor to
pitch in.
donate to the school, um, but if they say no, you can't show up with a bunch of armed goons to
Take
take the
their
money.
money.
Exactly.
Right.
Um,
And it's interesting too because education has gone down in
right.
America since back. So when it went, the closer it was to a one room schoolroom where everybody pitched in and we paid the teacher to train the kids how to read and write and do arithmetic and how to teach them morals and how to teach them government and geography. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to like Nevada. You can actually go to an old one room schoolroom and they'll have like a test like attached to the little desk, and most people can't answer all the questions that someone in fourth grade could answer.
Right.
And so we have had a dumbing down of America through our government, government funded government schools.
Right.
We've
Because
done we've spent more
everything the
money and done
government
less.
does
Yeah,
is inefficient
right,
because they do it by coercion.
right,
And when you do something by coercion, it makes everything, for one, it's immoral, and two, it makes everything less efficient.
right. Because um, every single purchase that the government makes is a third party purchase.
Right. It's a purchase that isn't directly to that isn't directly related to the wants of the people it's being purchased for.
Yeah. And I've heard some really, really good examples of that when someone said, "Hey, can you go buy a gift for my friend for me?" And I give you the money to go buy the gift. So you don't know the friend and it's not your money. You come home with a blow up dinosaur. Well, I got this blow up dinosaur. It was about the cost of money you gave me. Like, you bought my friend a blow up dinosaur. Why? They don't want a blow up dinosaur. Well, that's because you told me I had the choice. I got to make the decision on what I bought, and I got to make the decision with your money. So I don't really care if they like it or not either. So that's a third party purchase, right? That's happening.
Right. It's crazy. Um,
That's where you get a bloated government, and the Federal Reserve created crazy bloated government. That and one other amendment. I can't remember which one it was, but I think it was the 16th Amendment with giving the federal government the right to uh, tax income.
right. So the addition of the Federal Reserve and also the income tax um, meant that the government could basically print infinite money, um, and use that to create giant spending programs and also to create military bases in almost every country in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
And if the people are resistant to our military bases or resistant to our central bank money, then we figure out a way to go in there and dethrone the people that are
right,
there.
like Gaddafi,
Right.
who didn't want to um, have his money system backed by the dollar and wanted it to be backed by gold. And they decided that he was a tyrannical leader and they took him out.
And we wouldn't know the difference if he was or wasn't because we're living here in beautiful California, watching the evening news tell us that Gaddafi's a crazy person, and don't we want
Right,
crazy persons taken out? And we're of course saying, well, yeah, go take out that crazy person. He did what? And they can skew the story, change the story, and make us believe whatever they want us to believe because we're watching their squawk box television that tells us a vision of
right,
how to see the world that can be manipulated.
exactly. And yeah, like because money should not be based on debt. debt shouldn't be a thing. If you don't have the money to buy something, you shouldn't buy it.
Right.
And if you want, if you need capital to fund a business endeavor, then have it be a joint endeavor where you have the person funding it and you have the person doing the thing, and you just share the profit in whatever you make.
Right. And
That's
that's
how it should be instead of having
investing.
debt. Where you share the profit and share the loss instead of creating a loan where the interest is guaranteed or you take all their stuff. It's insane.
It is insane. All right, how many questions we got left?
There's a few more.
Okay, keep going.
Do you think it's bad to beat someone up and take their money to fund something you think should be funded?
No, you should not do that. It is
Yeah,
bad. Yes, it's bad.
exactly. I agree with that. Unfortunately, many people don't.
They don't.
Okay. Next question. Is there a way in which you can change an evil action into a good action without changing the action itself?
No, that's
Yeah,
Machiavellian.
exactly. Um, so do so this is my last question. I think I know what your answer will be based upon how you've been answering. But do right and wrong apply to everyone the same, or are there exceptions?
Everyone the same. We're
Exactly.
all equals on equal playing field before the Lord God who made us. Our Creator set the laws in motion. He gave us the transcendent law, and we are all equal before Him. Level
Right.
playing ground.
Every single person is equal, so it's a decentralized network, centralized under God.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And the role of government is to secure the God-given rights and to protect them. That's the whole role of government, is to protect the rights that God has established for human individuals.
Right. And um, would you really say it's government though if they're only doing what they're would you really say it's government though if they have no authority that's isn't something special to them?
Well, it's delegated authority, so they're only enacting the authority that they have, based on the true republic philosophy. It's they're acting on behalf of us to enact righteousness and justice. So, but based on the conversation we had so far, they can only do righteous and just things.
Right. So I like it's not like the state.
No, not the
It's more
state,
of
the community,
it's just people.
just people, right? Well, and so the Declaration of Independence says something similar to that, or the Constitution says something that is to that. That governments are established among men for the purpose of enacting the delegated authority of those men and their consent. But when government becomes corrupt, it's the right and the duty of those same men to then dissolve those structures that which they have given their consent to and create new structures.
Right. So um it's important to have structures to um like protect your property and things like that. As long as the structure is set up voluntarily and not through coercion.
Yeah,
And I'd say that's not really government, but governance.
governance.
It's
That's good.
yeah.
Yeah, because government then takes on its own persona.
Government is like it's a separate thing
Right.
from people, which it isn't. It's just there are like structures you put in place that are voluntary that make it simpler when something bad happens and you can approach that in a way that's not just like hysteria and mob acting.
Like it's like having a standing fire department. You're just choosing to put people that are currently the most physically able to
Right.
defend the homes. And after a few years, those men are no longer currently most physically able. And then you institute a new set of currently most physically able men.
Right. It's sort of um, like division of labor. You want someone who knows what they're doing to do a task over someone who doesn't know what they're doing.
With the latest technology, training, and science behind them.
Yeah.
And sometimes an average day to day individual has more training, technology, and wisdom than some people that have all the right have been paid to do a certain job. So, I
Right.
mean, I think that like even like firefighting, like it's a good example. Like I live in a very wooded area, and I was talking to a friend yesterday who bought himself a 2-inch fire hose with a pump, and he put in a tank, and it's basically for him to fight fire on his own house because
Right, because like there could be a case where the fire department's too far away from your house, and you need to make sure that your house doesn't burn down.
and they're not
And
even going to try to save your house because it's too hard to get to it, right?
right,
And that actually happened in the Palisade fires that just happened. There was like one house that didn't burn down, and it was because this guy had a little firefighting system that he put in place in his own home, and he was able to keep his house wet. It didn't catch on fire, and all the houses around him burned.
right, exactly. So like
It's an individual
it's
personal responsibility for your own property.
exactly like it's better to have decentralized systems of defense and defense of many different things than having a centralized system of defense that has a bottleneck of the
Resource.
the centralized resource.
Mm-hmm.
When when something is decentralized and you destroy one node of that network, the network is fine. But when you have a centralized system and you destroy the the central node of that network, the network is gone.
Right. Yep. And that's why I bought a bunch of sprinklers for my roof and where I
Exactly.
live, because we were evacuated, and I left my house's what's the word? I left the chance or the responsibility up to a centralized system that could have easily just said, well, the fire is coming this direction, and we're going to fight this fire big enough to matter and small enough to win, and your house is just not big enough to matter, and we might not be able to do it, so we're going to just let those houses burn, and we're going to make our line here, and we're going to defend that line. And they're making those arbitrary decisions without my knowledge or choice,
Right.
and therefore it's better to fight my own fire. And I during that fire period of time, there were I know people that stayed home with in their neighborhood with another 10 guys, and they fought to defend their own homes, and they all didn't burn down.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I think we have such high insurance now, is because we have centralized the fire department, and therefore we have put the fire department in charge of doing things that it can't actually physically do. And
Right.
then we tell the insurance companies, oh, by the way, if the fire department isn't able to do this, you have to pay to restore my house. And they're like, hey, we're in this for making money, and we can't restore all those homes. And if the fire department doesn't do their job, then we have to pay out all those people, and we're not doing that. So then all the prices of insurance goes through the roof,
Right.
you know.
And also insurance companies have no way to ensure that the properties that they're insuring will be safe from fires because they have no like they can't like they have no control over the fire departments or any sort of ways to mitigate those costs. It's just, oh, do you pay out or not? And then making it someone else that is very inefficient at doing things is making it is um is the one that's like making those costs lower. So like the like insurance should have a bit more control over um, like getting people to do things that ensures that the thing that they're insuring against doesn't happen.
Doesn't going to burn. Yeah, the house isn't going to burn, and that's why what we have right now in our neighborhoods, we have this FireWise program, so that these communities are getting together and they're policing their own um, trees and brush and duft and keeping the making sure the trees don't grow too close to the homes. So basically, they're doing this prevention on their own, and by doing so, all of those homes get a lower rate for insurance. Then the other thing that's happening is that there are some insurance companies that are actually deciding that we could actually create our own fire department, and
Right.
our own fire department would then take care of those 150 homes in that area that we personally are insuring, and then we don't have to leave it up to some municipal corrupt bureaucracy that ends up making arbitrary decisions about which houses they're going to protect and which houses they're not.
Exactly. Creating decentralized systems underneath the centralized system, so that when the centralized system breaks down, you have the decentralized system there to
Back up.
back up, and so that things can flourish when shit hits the fan and that sort of thing, you know?
Because we know that shit hits the fan.
Exactly.
That's cool.
um, okay, I think this is a good place to end it.
All right.
This is the True Republic. Uh, every interaction should be uh, voluntary between individuals instead of a centralized system. We should have decentralization. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I know.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.